Let's start with a comfortable, universally accepted assumption that almost every management team in the world operates on. You probably believe it too. It goes like this. Interpersonal social faith validates trust definition effectiveness. In plain English, we tend to assume that general, interpersonal trust, that warm feeling that most people can be trusted, is the ultimate proof of a healthy system. But today, we're going to completely shatter that assumption.
Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're taking a profound, almost mathematical journey into what can really only be called the algebra of conscience. We're exploring what happens when procedural institutions validate trust better than interpersonal social faith. We're going to uncover what actually happens when systems mature and why relying on a generalized faith in people might just be the exact thing that causes your organizational trust to completely collapse.
Here is the roadmap we'll be following today. First, the trust assumption. Second, the data disconnect. Third, the 7 lenses of trust. Fourth, the chain reaction. Fifth, predicting organizational behavior. And finally, we'll wrap up with AI vibe coding solutions. Let's jump right into Section 1, the trust assumption, or as we like to call it, the comfortable lie.
Okay, let's dive into this. In the business world, we are super comfortable managing hard metrics with math, right? But when it comes to soft elements like company morale or trust, we suddenly rely on gut instinct. We try to solve deep systemic issues with Friday pizza parties or trust falls, but that's a comfortable lie. Trust isn't just a universal vibe. It's actually a structurally validated, measurable algorithm that is deeply, deeply tied to specific value systems. It's not just an art, it is hard science.
That brings us to Section 2, the data disconnect. This is where we see what happens when rules outweigh faith. To really prove this, we have to look at the numbers. We're drawing on a massive data set from the World Values Survey. We're talking 78 countries, 20 languages, and thousands of responses. And out of that massive data pool emerges this exact correlation coefficient, negative 0.0803. Now, in spiral dynamics theory, the blue vMEME is a psychological stage completely focused on order, structure, rules, and moral duty. And across our sample of 1,222 respondents, there is a very clear negative correlation between this rule-bound blue stage and the belief that most people can be trusted. This number acts as a character in our story. It marks the exact moment a system stops validating trust through generalized faith and starts demanding hard, procedural proof. And this brilliantly illustrates the pattern. As that rule-bound blue stage strengthens, structural validation heavily outweighs generalized faith. Look at these massive trust drops in institutions that claim moral authority. We've got the WHO at negative 0.1524, relevant religions at negative 0.1097, and charitable organizations at negative 0.1069. Why the massive drop? Because when procedural institutions violate their own established codes, the blue value system doesn't just lose faith, it experiences a total existential betrayal.
So the crucial point here is that blue-dominant systems don't necessarily lack trust. It's not like they're just becoming cynical misanthropes. They simply stop validating trust through interpersonal social faith, and they start requiring rigid structural calibration. They want to see the rules followed. If you try to measure their trust by asking, hey, do you trust your coworkers? You are measuring the wrong thing entirely.
Moving on to Section 3, 7 lenses of trust. Let's explore what we call the Tower of Babel scenario. What we just saw with the blue stage is really only one piece of the puzzle. The exact same definition of trust splinters and is processed through completely different psychological lenses, known as vMEMEs. We can rapidly see that purple validates trust through tribal belonging and safety, showing a positive correlation with a country free of corruption. Turquoise, on the other hand, integrates holistically. But look at red. Red shows a massive negative correlation with most people can be trusted. This proves that trust definitions diverge radically based on scale label specificity and whichever value system is currently active.
Looking at this chart, we see different systems withdrawing trust for entirely different reasons. Red rejects naive interpersonal trust for pure survival because in a power-driven world, naive trust just gets you exploited. Yellow, which is a highly systems-thinking stage, distrusts calcified bureaucracies like NATO because it's constantly evaluating whether an institution can adapt to systemic needs. And as we saw earlier, blue is mourning the collapse of moral architecture in charities. So clearly, a single one-size-fits-all trust intervention absolutely cannot solve all 3 of these collapses.
Now for Section 4, the chain reaction. What are the butterfly effects of misaligned trust?
Let's see how this builds.
What actually happens when management forces the wrong type of trust validation onto a team that demands a different structural calibration? Imagine a blue-dominant team that desperately wants clear rules and procedural integrity. But management comes in and tries to build trust with team-building exercises and interpersonal faith validation. What happens? It triggers massive procedural legitimacy doubts. The staff is sitting there thinking, why are we doing trust falls when our actual compliance protocols are completely broken? This fragments the definition of trust, it deepens their rigidity, and ultimately cascades into a total loss of predictive validity for all your trust metrics. You're effectively measuring a mirage.
This takes us to Section 5, predicting organizational behavior, or formalizing the soul of a company.
To rescue us from this fragmented chaos, we have to move away from old goals and start maximizing systemic stability using cold, hard math. Enter the dynamic programming model, or DPM. This is a mathematical framework that treats human emotion like the state vector of a rocket. By using a state vector made up of 13,000 global correlations, it captures the psychological position of a company. It literally calculates the invisible consequences of management actions, the specific fears, the trust drops, the changes in well-being before those actions even happen.
Let's look at a concrete example. Take a single management action, sending staff on unpaid vacation. If you apply this to a purple, tribal-minded team, the data actually shows a positive correlation. They accept it as a shared ritual sacrifice that genuinely strengthens their group bonding. But if you give that exact same pill to an orange, achievement-oriented sales team, you get a severe negative correlation. They view it as a direct block to their career advancement, and they'll probably just quit. This proves that prediction without validation attribution modeling becomes totally unreliable. Finally, Section 6, AI Vibe Coding Solutions. Let's look at the future of insight.
Now you might be wondering, how on earth do I bring 13,000 hidden mathematical correlations into my daily operations without hiring a team of PhD data scientists? The answer is beautifully illustrated here with the SD Navigator. This interface was created via a massive 2025 to 2026 tech trend known as AI vibe coding. This is where users instruct large language models, like Claude Code or Cursor, using purely natural language to build ops without writing traditional code. A manager can literally just type, "Show me blue stage trust patterns," and the AI generates the visualization on the fly. You can actively model how your actions will impact the fear, trust, and well-being vectors of your team's totally unique psychological profile. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this final, absolutely crucial thought to ponder. What breaks when trust validation stops measuring interpersonal social faith and starts measuring structural validation through procedural institutions? Think about it. If a dynamic programming model and an AI algorithm can map your organization's systemic conscience, predict butterfly effects, and understand the soul of your company better than human gut instinct ever could, what does that mean for the very future of leadership? Thank you so much for exploring the algebra of conscience with us today.